Manx Radio Podcasts, powered by Shaw.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Hello and welcome to the latest look back at Talking Heads. Replacing the bridge in Laxey, a provisional alcohol licence for a proposed Tesco Express store in Douglas, and encouraging people to visit Castletown were all popular topics for discussion this week. But we'll start with the idea of equality legislation for the island. Here's Stu Peters.
Talking Heads, brought to you by Magic Carpets, with the only Carndine design showroom on the island.
Does the island need legislation to ensure equality? Although the Equality Bill itself has been subject to delays, it's hoped a same-sex marriage bill for the island can be progressed this year. Does the island still need laws to protect minorities? Is an equality bill a must, or could it make things unnecessarily bureaucratic? Would you welcome the introduction of same-sex marriage legislation, or is it something that you fundamentally object to? Let's go to the lines, and our first caller for 2016 is our pal Rob from Peel. Hello, Rob.
Well, I listened to the detail of it. There's a lot of people suffering in the island through the rises in the utilities and food and whatever. And I just hope it's not window dressing. I hope that they bring a bill that will help the most vulnerable people on the island and bring them up the ladder a bit from where they are. So I do speak to a lot of people, and there's a lot of uncalled policy, but people at the wrong end of the scale.
All right, so you're hoping it's not just going to be window dressing this. You think that there is a need for equality legislation, but it needs to do the job properly.
Yes, benefits have been cut back on some people, and people find it very, very hard just to sort of finance out every month.
Yeah, well, there's a big difference between sort of philosophical equality and real equality, and somebody sent me a text that says pretty much what you're saying. I think equality on the rates is more urgent, Mr. Bell. I think that maybe equality of energy costs would be a nice thing to have, to be honest, because there are all sorts of things like that that are, at the very least, an irritation to us, aren't they, Rob?
Yes, and the carers benefit, they're good enough to put that up £20-odd.
Yeah.
It needs more than that, and there needs to be a lot more rises to cope with people who are looking after their sick partners and what have you.
Sure, yeah. All right, Rob, thank you very much for your call, and I'm glad that you were our first caller of 2016. Peter's on, Peter Murcott. Hello, Peter.
The first point I would make is that they had a government consultation in November. Now, for reasons that were unsatisfactory and I challenged and didn't get anywhere, the consultation didn't last the 6 weeks, which it's supposed to do. It only lasted 5.
Oh.
That's the first point. And the reasons for shortening it were really inadequate, and it really called into question what the code was all about. But the second thing is, Stu, they haven't even reported on the consultation yet.
Oh, right.
What's the purpose of a public consultation if you're going to announce, right, we're going ahead with this bill?
Yeah.
I mean, I went and inquired at the Cabinet Office, and the results of the consultation will not be available till the middle of January.
Right.
Well, to me, that makes a mockery of the whole process.
Well, not necessarily, Peter, because surely the consultation, the results of the consultation will be available to the members of Tynwald before they vote on this.
I wouldn't like to say on that, if put into question before they vote. The fact is, if we're going to have these public consultations, the purpose of the public consultation is to have them thoroughly analysed, and quite clearly, I would suspect they haven't been fully analysed yet.
Yeah.
And then I would have thought that the next stage was for a decision to be taken in the light of what that had thrown up. Now, we have no idea what that had thrown up.
Right.
So I think that a question for the next general election is whether the legislature will show more respect for the public in its consultations by at least letting us see what the result was as analysed before proceeding further. And that is what's not happening here.
I don't know about you, Peter. I'm not convinced by all these consultations. I sometimes think that they're just window dressing and just a sop really to the electorate to say, well, we gave you a chance to have your say about this, and, you know.
Well, they didn't, did they?
Well,
I'm going to go a bit cautious here because you and I are on the verge of agreeing again. I would agree with you. I think that I'm not really convinced myself about these consultations. I think that there is a danger, and this is a really a prime example of where it is just window dressing. It certainly has been with regard to this marriage. The other comment I'll make, and I'm not going to make any comment, you know what my views are about the law, and I've made those.
Yep.
What I'm going to say, and what I do think is something of deep concern, there are two issues. You have mentioned once before on the radio, I remember some months ago, you mentioned the fact that they were evidently short of legal draftsmen. I remember you bringing that subject up, and that there was problems in getting things drafted.
Yeah.
Now, to my mind, something which, leaving aside all other things, should be far, 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 far down the list, and was why it's been rushed to the front at a time when they're short of legal draftsmen, I can't imagine. The fact was that I think the draftsman, it said in the consultation, actually very kindly gave of his own time to draft out the necessary bill for consultation on this so-called same-sex marriage.
Okay.
There's the first thing. The second thing is that the government has got more than enough on its plate on legislation. Evidently, there's quite a bit of legislation that needs to be brought in that hasn't for various reasons.
Yes.
Either because they haven't got the necessary draftsmen or they haven't got the legislative time. Now, what I think is really a matter of deep concern is that when we've got many, many problems facing the Isle of Man, and government is first and foremost there to be able to address those problems, they're bringing something which is certainly, leaving aside all the moral issues, it is not an issue over which there has been huge public demand for.
Sure.
And it's certainly not an issue that's going to forward anything on the Isle of Man. So I think that is really my contribution for today. I wish government would get on with, I'll tell you what is a real issue, and one of many that is not being addressed. And that is, you've got a lot of young people who are growing up, and I know one of them, born in the Isle of Man, who would dearly like to be able to get his own home, and he can't.
Yep.
Because the wages that he earns and the prices are just don't match up. And he knows that he's in a hopeless position. And he feels very aggrieved that as Manx born and bred with a long ancestry, he cannot even buy a home in the Isle of Man. Now, that's just one issue that I think should be top of the list for government, not this equality bill, which is, as I pointed out before, is simply going to cause a lot of dissension and is going to cost a lot of money, or even less, the so-called same-sex marriage. And that's my contribution for the beginning of the new year, Stu, and
lovely.
Wish you again Happy New Year.
All right, thank you very much, Peter. Nice to hear from you. And yes, I think I agree with a lot of that. Let's go to the lines. We've got Terry on. Hello, Terry.
Well, first of all, I think a telephone program like that you run yourself, first class though it is, I find that usually people love to get things off the chest, and sometimes it can be a bit disparaging.
Okay.
But they never a lot of them never put a solution so that they can be, set up to be either shot down or supported.
Yeah.
If I can just think, put it this way, here we are talking about something about legalising gay marriage.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, whatever England tell us to do on that topic, we're going to have to do anyway, because we're a thing. Secondly, gay people have been around since time immemorial.
Yeah.
Since time immemorial. And it's been let go by, in modern times, on a nod and a wink. It's not all that long ago type of thing that the British Navy used to hang gay people.
Oh, I know. There were all sorts of things. Well, it was illegal here up until fairly recently, wasn't it, to be homosexual?
And it was passed, it was past gay people were passed to something about 20 years ago, as I remember. And I think everybody would know somebody of that persuasion.
Yep.
In Iran, and they're still hanging them with a Hayab crane off a wagon.
Oh, I know, it's horrendous. But thank you for your contribution.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Is the system of electing members of the Legislative Council tarnishing the public view of the job that's actually done by MLCs? A former member of the Upper Chamber says last year's long and drawn-out process of filling vacant LegCo seats devalues the work carried out by those in the Chamber. Dudley Butt stepped down from the council at the end of February last year. Has the work of the Legislative Council been overshadowed by the apparently flawed process of election to the Chamber? Not the first time either. We've had 2 or 3 of these things over recent years, haven't we, where it seems to have dragged on for weeks, months. Is the council important to help keep the Council of Ministers in check? Should members be publicly elected, or should the system stay as it is? Or should it be gotten rid of altogether? Tell us your thoughts. John says, yes, the electoral system for MLCs does need looking at, but not being publicly elected is the public's biggest objection to them. I don't know if you've got a point of view on it or not. Luckily, Sylvia does, and she's on the line. Hi, Sylvia.
I think myself that when they go into the House of Keys, half of them, they've no political experience, so they're doing their apprenticeship.
Yes.
And having gained, I don't think they should be allowed to put their names forward, or anybody should put their names forward to be a member of the Legislative Council until they've proven themselves by doing their at least 2 terms, being voted in by the people 2 terms as an MHK.
I think that's a great idea, yeah.
Those are the people who should be, because there's no substitute for experience.
Yeah. Well, and maybe an age limit. Maybe only have Legco members who are over 60 or 55 or whatever, you know.
Well, every wrinkle on their face is a road they've travelled.
Yes.
But I don't think they should be allowed to just walk in off the street and decide they'd like to be a member of the Manx Legislative Council.
No.
I think that's totally wrong, and I think I don't think that would happen in any other way, in any other government anywhere in the world.
Well, I don't know, but I mean...
unless it's out in Africa or somewhere.
Well, yeah, but I mean, there are hereditary lords and things in the House of Lords.
Yeah, well,
in the UK.
we're not part of it. And this is
we're
the trouble.
not.
Everything's getting copied from England. Failed systems, overpayments, and everybody who steps foot on the island is supposed to be treated as Manx.
Yes.
They've no experience, and half of them don't. They're not interested. It's all here for personal gain, and then suddenly they're coming to the end of their career and decide, oh, I don't really want to retire, but I can get a handful of money if I do, and then I'll go in the Legislative Council. I
What do you think about... I mean, you say that it ought to be former MHKs who've been elected for 2 terms. I think that's a great idea.
Yes, I do.
But do you think that sitting MHKs should be allowed to stand for Legco? Because that causes all sorts of problems.
Well, yes.
You think it's okay that they should be...
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
Because
And
people
I
have suggested, especially last year, people suggested, well, you know, the reason that person stood for Legco is that he knew he wasn't going to get elected again. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know. But
Well, it's possible, isn't it? I don't know. All things are possible, but the point is the whole thing should be based on experience. And as I say, there's no substitute for experience.
No, I agree with that. I personally don't think that MHKs should be allowed to stand for it because they've been elected to serve a term by the constituents and they ought to serve the full term as MHKs.
Well, alter the way that it's done. If you're going to alter it, you alter it in a manner that it coincides with an election.
Yeah. I mean, if you're not re-elected, then you can stand for Legco if you've got the 2 full terms as MHK behind you, sort of thing.
Yes, and otherwise you can't. And you certainly can't just walk in off the street.
Yeah, all right. Some good points there. Lovely.
It's worth thinking about, I think.
Well, and you think that also that MHKs ought to have some sort of qualifications to be politicians anyway, don't you?
Yes, I do. I think they should take an examination set by Claire...
Claire Christian?
Yeah, Claire Christian.
Yeah.
She's had enough experience and family experience as well to back her to pick out the questions that were necessary for them to sit. And they can go and spend 12 months researching it and reading Hansard. And then they've got a knowledge of when they come round and knock on the door. I mean, half of them that come round and knock on the door, you don't know who they are or where they've come from. And you ask them something, they don't know as much as you know yourself.
And you sometimes think that some of the promises they make are absolutely stupid because they're never ever going to be able to do it.
Well, they can't make promises, but I mean, if kids have to sit for an A-level to take on a position, to even get to university, I mean, why should they be able to walk off the street without any qualification, any knowledge, some of them, of how the Isle of Man actually works or did work?
Yep, some good points there as ever, Sylvia. Thank you very much for your call today. Shenanigans of the Legco elections just show what a complete farce it is. The last time Legco sat in 2015 was in June. They do very little for the £1,000 a week, regardless of what Dudley Butt wants to spout. It's just a club for failed politicians and friends of politicians that we can't afford. Get rid of this complete waste of space and save taxpayers' money. Sitting on the fence today. Comment from Stevie says, should change it from MLC to JFB, jobs for the boys. And that is a widely held perception. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. I think it's probably not. I've known a couple of MLCs who do seem to work very hard at it. I know that when David Collister was elected an MLC, we talked about it a couple of times, and he was doing a vast amount of work. I mean, a huge amount of work. So I think it's unfair to presume that none of them do anything. Stu, the work of Legco could be done by 4 competent civil servants, thereby saving half the wage bill if it was organised right, says Bill. Okie dokie. It's called democracy. What utter rubbish. Let's get rid of MLCs and Mr. Bell would have a field day. Comyn would get away with all sorts with no checks and balances, says Dave. OK, so is that then the role of Legco as we see it? Is it to be a check and a balance on executive power? Of course, outsiders should be allowed to stand for Legco. 1, they're part of the electorate, members of the public, therefore they should have some idea of what the island needs. And as for people being elected just because family has been in Tynwald for generations, it beggars belief. We're not supposed to be a feudal society. I don't think anybody was suggesting that, to be honest. Emphasis being on not supposed, says Jan. I don't think that was the suggestion. Another thought, Legco should not be a retirement home for politicians that voters have rejected, says Tom. I don't agree with the Lady Sylvia. I don't think that all MLCs work the same. I personally know some that think it's a full-time job and do go in all day. Some are more qualified than others, for example, law, IT, etc. Sometimes MHKs get things wrong and the MLCs have to send the paperwork back. Some MHKs complain about the MLCs but are glad to go there when they think they may not get in at the next election or things are not working well for them. Plus, they don't need to worry about setting the people up who voted them in. About upsetting the people that voted them in. We know certain things don't get done before an election in case the MHKs upset the voters. That from Anne. Some good points there, Anne. Yeah, I think that there is going to be a limit on things that are going to upset voters this year because there's an election in September. And it's things that probably do need to be done, but they probably won't be until after the election.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
What could be done to encourage more people to visit Castletown? The owner of the Callows Yard complex in the town is asking Castletown Chamber of Commerce, the commissioners and major businesses in the town to come together to fund a long-term advertising campaign to promote Castletown. He's also written to the Chief Minister to set up a meeting to discuss the way ahead. Roy Tilliard says teamwork, including government support, is required to resurrect the town's fortunes. What do you think would encourage more people to shop in Castletown? Are you likely to take a trip to the town once refurbishment work in the area is complete? Or do shopping areas like Douglas or out-of-town places have more appeal? Is it the work to refurbish the town square that's put you off going to Castletown, maybe? Let's go to the lines. We've got Stephen on. Hello, Stephen.
Well, I think I've said it before, but I'd like to rehash it. And I don't think that Castletown's got a particular problem that's any different, probably, to Peel, Port St Mary, Port Erin and even Ramsey to some degree. And as you know, you have a business, I believe, in Douglas.
Yeah.
And I think the problem is that the shops are experiencing 2 problems. One is a change in shopping habits. People are purchasing more and more online. And secondly, we are experiencing a bigger reduction in the number of visitors that come to the island, and consequently, in my view, the number of shops that are existing to service the businesses are suffering because of a lack of footfall.
Yeah.
And I feel that the only way we can improve this footfall is to attract new residents, or not new residents, but new visitors to the island. Now, I know that the old brigade will say, we are no longer a bucket and spade. Well, we all know we're no longer a bucket and spade, but people don't go to the Lake District for the beaches, and they don't go to Ireland for the beaches. They get something like 7 million. And I feel that whilst these schemes, these road schemes, as I call them, are not regeneration schemes, they're road schemes, they have caused issues, but they're not the main problem. I would like to see, my wish list would be that some of this £50 million is spent, A, on advertising the island, and B, maybe offsetting some of the fares for the poorer times to attract more people here. And I feel that that would help with getting more visitors to our island because, for example, I visited Liverpool earlier in the year, and that is a very, very busy city, and not an advert did I see anywhere on the pierhead or around the very busy parts of Albert Docks for any adverts for the island. And I would have thought even on our doorstep we could do better.
Yeah, poster campaign even.
Unless we attract more people to the island, the number of shops and the shops will continue to have this problem.
All right, some very good points there, Stephen. Thank you very much for your call. Comments. Hi, Stu. I was one of the registrars at the castle before weddings were centralised at one office in Douglas. We used to be very busy with weddings, bringing lots of footfall into Castletown, particularly at the weekends. Maybe government could be persuaded to rethink the out of Douglas registries. That from Sarah, who says, just to clarify, weddings still go ahead at the castle, but it's now an approved venue and therefore the cost is very different to a registry office wedding. Thank you very much, Sarah. Yes, I've been to a wedding at Castletown. Yes, at the castle there. So, yeah, a good location for that kind of thing. That's maybe one of the things that ought to be looked at. George called, they should have let Tesco come into Castletown. So they've got what they deserve. They complain about the supermarket, but they don't seem to realise the pulling power of Tesco and how it would have been better for people in the south rather than having to go into Douglas. That's just how they are. I've got no sympathy for them. Right, fair dues, George, thank you. The problem with Castletown is Callow's Yard. Get that sorted out first. Nobody wants to go into Callow's Yard to start with. He's only in it for himself, says Dave. I assume you're talking about Roy Tilliard, but he's a businessman. Of course he's in it for himself. That's what businessmen are there for. They're not there to be public benefactors first. That might come later. But, you know, the primary reason to open a business is to try and make a few quid out of the job. And I don't know Roy Tilliard. I might have interviewed him on the phone once, but I don't think I've met him. So I've got no axe to grind, but I know that he's one of those people that people either like him or really don't like him very much at all. And I don't quite understand that. You know, I mean, certainly whether you think Callow's Yard was good or bad, and I think more people think it's bad, the guy had a vision for the place to do something with it. Now, that vision, it would seem, was the wrong one, but these things can all be changed in the fullness of time, can't they? Rob says they could have a treasure hunt every week around the shops to bring people in with their children to do it, but there aren't enough places to eat in Castletown. If they had that, it would generate more visitors to the place. Not enough places to eat. Castletown has the best town square in the island and they use it as a car park. Why not a plaza-type square? Make the pay and display free, says Robbie. That sounds like a plan, Robbie. I could go along with that. We need shops. Mr. Tilliard's destroyed the shops and has now won the battle to put Callow's Yard into residential accommodation. A town should be nice, affordable shops, not accommodation. He's taken the heart out of the town. Any time a nice shop set up in Callow's Yard, after a short period, the rents were increased so much they were forced out. Years ago, Castletown used to be full of shops, says Angela. Well, I think to Stephen's point earlier on, I think that retailing has changed massively over the last few years. You know, you're saying that years ago it used to be full of shops, but years ago people probably didn't buy things from Amazon or wherever online. Fenella called in Peel. We have an excellent campsite which brings in lots of visitors during the summer, and they do come down into town. People do come down into town from that. In Peel we have 26 places you can get something to eat or a cup of tea, which I think helps bring people in. Okay. Maria called. I think that guy's right. I'm not a great fan of Tesco's, but they do bring people in. People follow them around. Should have been allowed in Castletown. It would have brought many more people into the town. Then people from the south wouldn't have to go into Douglas if they wanted to shop there. Very good point, I think. I live in Castletown. Unfortunately, I don't think the shops will ever return. Lack of parking, probably the main problem. Is that what it's down to? I mean, you know how lazy I am. I don't walk anywhere. If I can't drive up to the doorstep, then I tend to not go places. But a number of times I've been down to Castletown. I've never had a problem parking there. Stu, at least Tesco in Castletown will keep pensioners off the road driving south at 20 miles an hour during times when people just want to get to work. And David H., before you start, that was a comment from a listener. That's not me. I guess you might have thought you'd hear from me about this, says Nick from the Sweet Shop in Castletown. Roy Tilliard rubbed a few people up the wrong way a few years ago. True enough, but like you, I've got no axe to grind either. The problem we have in Castletown are intrinsic, not generic, like your first caller said. Part of it is the recession, part of it is the regeneration. It's certainly not the internet. Okay. There are loads of things on offer in Castletown that you simply wouldn't buy online. A cup of tea or a haircut, for example. Yeah, that's true. The main issue with the regeneration was the timing of it. Doing it through the summer was utterly disastrous. The local commissioners do nothing to help the traders. In fact, they make decisions that actively damage business. Not having a Christmas light switch on being a prime example. If they promoted the town better and stopped destroying us, we'd all have half a chance. Rant over. Regards from Nick. Thank you, Nick. If you were starting a new retail business that would compete against the internet, would you go to Castletown? No. You'd want it in Douglas, where you'd make more money. Trouble is, everything I can think of as a new shop will be up against the web shops with their buying power. Well, Nick makes a good point. There are certain things, hairdressers and coffee shops and things like that, hopefully, fingers crossed, that are fairly internet-proof. Food is the only thing that people won't buy online. That's from Chris22, who is a retailer himself. Okie doke. Rob says, does Castletown have a website to tell people about the community and the local shops? If they don't, they should get one. Peel has Peel Online, and I'm told it attracts a lot of interest to the town. Okay. If some of the traders gave a bit more customer service instead of complaining when you go in their shops, it might attract a few more customers. Who wants to look at sour faces when you shop? I thought you left your problems at home when you deal with the public. A retired successful retailer who gave good service. Thank you for that.
Talking Heads, brought to you by Magic Carpets, with the only Carndine design showroom on the island.
You're listening to the latest Talking Heads podcast, featuring highlights from the programme over the past week.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Would you welcome the opening of another Tesco store in Douglas? Tesco's provisional alcohol licence for its new Express store in Douglas will have restrictions attached, though. Making its decision, the licensing court heard evidence from several parties, some of whom opposed the application. They claimed there were already enough licensed premises near the new Express store. There'd be an increase in alcohol-fuelled trouble and problems with parking. But the court said suggestions of more disorder weren't borne out by police statistics and noted that the constabulary hadn't opposed the application. It had been pointed out that without a licence, Tesco Express simply would not open. So what do we think about this? Is this a positive step for shoppers in Douglas? Could it help to attract more people to Strand Street? Or will it make little difference to your shopping habits? It's been granted permission, a provisional drinks licence has been confirmed, with all sorts of conditions to it, including that they're not going to be able to offer for sale any beer, cider or lager with an ABV of over 5.5%, excluding premium lines without the prior approval of the cops. And there are a whole list of things that they can and can't do to, I expect, to try and satisfy some of the concerns that have been expressed about people using it for buying cheap booze and stuff. Robin Peel called, no, I don't think putting a Tesco Express in Strand Street is a good idea. Part of the idea is for them to get a foothold in the Isle of Man and push ShopRite out altogether. There's no value to the Isle of Man. They work for their shareholders only. In the long term, we should keep the ShopRite stores. Well, I think that pretty much every business works primarily for its shareholders, doesn't it? And an awful lot of people use Tesco. It's crazy having a Tesco Express, says Anne. There are enough food and drink shops already. We have too many drink problems on the island without encouraging young people with more outlets. Well, that's kind of what Harry's saying, in fairness to Harry. And I'm not saying he's wrong, it's just that I don't know that, the fact that there's another supermarket that also sells booze is going to encourage young people to go out and drink. Maybe I'm wrong. I often am. A canopy through Strand Street to keep off the rain would make shopping more pleasurable. Yeah, and that wouldn't cost much, would it? I suspect, says John, that the biggest objectors to this venture were those with vested interests. Nail hit on the head with the hammer of truth there, I think. We need to be filling the empty spaces, says John. Stu, I think it's a great idea. I look forward to a Tesco Express. The ability to nip in and pick up a few bits and pieces will save me driving to the bigger store. Happy days, says Shirley. Happy days, fantastic. So pleased Tesco's opening in Strand Street. I think it'll revitalise that end of the town. I don't agree with the restrictions unless they apply to all alcohol outlets, says Rob. I think convenience store is a bit of a misnomer in Strand Street. Not much parking. Well, apart from that huge car park round the back of it. And when the prom is done, playing dodgems in the shared space, says Jan. OK, let's go to the lines and see what John makes of this. Hello, John.
Yes, I just thought of a couple of points which many people may not have thought of. The first one being that the hotels on the promenade could suffer a detrimental effect to Tesco selling cheap booze. All the bikers that come over here within a stone's throw of the Strand could possibly be inclined to end up on the promenade with Tesco cheap booze with the hotel bars empty. And once again, yet another nail in the coffin to those hotels along that stretch of promenade.
Yeah, but John, I mean, if people wanted to buy cheap booze from the supermarket, there are plenty of supermarkets, and you've got the Wine Right just round the corner on Victoria Road there, so there are plenty of places that people can buy booze other than from the hotels, surely.
Yeah, but that's quite a distance from those hotels on the promenade, though, isn't it? If we're discussing Tesco down by Lake Road there, that's quite a distance. A lot of the bikers don't even know that it exists, or a lot of the holiday makers, I should say, not necessarily bikers, and they certainly wouldn't be able to find their way to Victoria Road. But with Tesco, we're literally within a stone's throw of all those major hotels on the promenade. Anyway, that's just a point of view that I don't think many people will have thought of. But at the end of the day, we don't want to see hotels closing down, which has happened a lot in the past, as we know. And I just feel that possibly with cheap booze being available virtually on the promenade, let's face it, virtually on the promenade, then it certainly wouldn't help the hotel's cause, would it?
Right. OK, fair point. Thank you very much for your call. Why is everyone making it a drink issue, says Gary. You've got Iceland across the road behind, selling drink, and pubs 20 yards away at the front. It's just something for the moaners to moan about. Back to the lines. Let's see what Peter makes of this. Hello, Pete.
I'm sick of hearing on the radio every time Tesco's mentioned. Tesco's, to me, and a personal, my own opinion, and I do know other people, but for me personally, Tesco, I have no shares or anything in it, so needn't worry that line. As a personal consumer, I find Tesco has reduced the prices on the Isle of Man dramatically.
Yeah, now, and that's the important thing, isn't it?
You get from them.
Yeah.
And so I'm praising them.
Yeah.
The thing is, if you remember how many years ago when Tesco's first came here, everybody, the little grocery stores, everybody complained it would put them out of business.
Yeah.
In fact, it's done the opposite. Nowadays, you can go into your little grocer's shop or whatever convenience store, and have you noticed the last few years or recently how much the prices have dramatically decreased?
Yeah, because of the competition.
Reduced.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's competition.
Yeah.
And therefore, competition is a very healthy thing for the consumer, is it not?
Oh, it is, absolutely.
Especially now, my situation, I'm joining the 65 Club, and therefore, we have to watch our pennies unless you are a wealthy person and it's only beer money to them.
Sure.
But as a normal person, an average pension, you have to be very careful. And so, like the Tesco and the other supermarkets, they are a help to us people in the 65 Club.
Good. Yeah.
Right. And now they've reduced it. Now, I haven't seen any firms, little corner shops go bust. Have you? Have you ever noticed any disappear?
I think people would say that they have done over the years, but I've not noticed any recently,
Not really,
certainly.
No, they've united and joined up to be a little a supermarket business, like supermarkets do.
Spas and whatever, yeah.
Right. So actually, they're very good. And as for the beer issue, this is my personal experience. I know of hoteliers who have gone to Tesco and were at the beginning loading the trolley up with about, say, 10 or 20 boxes of cheap Carling lager, we'll say.
Yes, yeah.
And then selling them in the hotel £1. And now it was only about 50p a tin, and yet they were selling them for £1 to their customers.
Good business. Yeah.
Right, double profits, 100% profit there.
Yeah, well, that's what business is there for.
And now they're complaining about it. Now, come off it, because Tesco actually put a limit, I believe. They put a limit at only 2 or 3 cases. They knew what was happening.
Yeah.
And they knew that it was because the stocks were running out with these boarding house keepers.
Gotcha. All right, Peter, I need to move on, but thank you very much for your call. You'll never stop the young drinking to excess. They have done for generations. One more store won't make any difference. That from Tom. Barbara called, people that drink will get it somewhere regardless. I think it's just about time that Tesco was given a bit of a chance on the island. Every time they try and do something, somebody objects. I don't drink or smoke, but I think they should be given the licence. Alcohol is like drugs. If people want it, they'll get hold of it. How ridiculous. ShopRite 50 yards away, no restrictions. Are we protecting ShopRite? I'll now use Tesco's even more. Fairness down the drain. Right then. John's on the line. Hello, John.
We know where the opposition and where the screams are coming from.
Oh, yeah.
But I'll tell you now, wait till Aldi or Lidl come here, then you'll hear them really scream.
Right, yes.
because that will really put, and it was in the press, I think, yesterday or the day before, that Aldi are expanding. I can't remember how many new stores they're planning for this year, but they will be looking at the Isle of Man, and then we'll hear them all screaming.
Right, yeah, okay.
Because
and you think...
when we are in England, the last place we go is Aldi and stock up before we hit the boat. And I'll tell you now, their prices will really make them sit up and take notice.
Right, okay, interesting stuff. Don't see what all the fuss is about. All the convenience stores run by major supermarkets in the UK that I've been to sell alcohol. Don't forget, though, convenience store prices are generally higher than the larger main stores. Yes, they are. Let's get Aldi over here. Cat and pigeon comes to mind, says Kev. Yes, the prices have decreased since Tesco came, but who's borne the brunt of the decreases? The producers. No Manx produce in Tesco. Why not? At least ShopRite support as local producers and advertise on the radio, unlike Tesco. Well, quoted for truth. I, for one, am right behind Tesco in the Strand. Competition is a good thing. Let's face it, ShopRite in Market Street is a run-down old mess of a shop. Do you think? Oh. And this might be a kick up the what's it to get it a more shopper-friendly store. That is Neil's view, not necessarily one held by Manx Radio or, all that stuff. Regarding bikers buying booze in pubs and or off-licence, convenience stores, etc., going to ShopRite at Victoria Road anytime during TT and MGP, and you'll see any number of bikers buying not just booze, but groceries as well and everything else as well. Good. Okay, thank you.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Should the bridge in Laxey simply be replaced as soon as possible? Laxey residents have been told to expect a brand new bridge for TT Week this year. The long-standing structure at the bottom of Old Laxey Hill was wiped out during last month's flooding. But some residents aren't satisfied with the lack of public consultation offered. What is most important here? That the bridge is replaced as quickly as possible, or should more time be taken to canvass the views of residents about the replacement? Would the current arrangements cause chaos during the TT festival, or would everybody just happen to manage? This from Dave. He says, I think all these projects need to be stopped and investigated fully by Mr. Cannon after uncovering the underhand and disgusting way the DOI went about the removal and dumping of silt from Peel. Right, that could slow things down a bit. Stu, I think the Americans should pay for the new bridge. Oh, good, I like the way this is going. Because it's their fault it got washed away in the first place. If you Google HAARP with two A's, HAARP, weather, you might find it interesting. Yes, I've seen stuff about that. And, this is the old contrails and all the rest of it, isn't it? And changing the weather. Yes. Are they trying to rush this thing through so they don't have to debate the cost? I prefer John Dogg's idea, says Phil. I don't think it was John Dogg that suggested the Bailey Bridge, the ex-War Department Bailey Bridge. I think it was one of our other listeners that came up with that one. 35 grand, a two-lane bridge that would go in fairly quickly, long weekend sort of thing. Yes, it might not be in keeping with the area. In fairness, Stu, we're not talking about a national treasure. Either talk about it for ages like the prom or get on and build it, says Bill. Yes, well, it might not be a national treasure to you or I, Bill. But if you live in Laxey, then you might be very fond of that bridge the way it was and be a little bit worried about us all suggesting that we just throw some sort of a pontoon in. Eddie called, how on earth has the DOI come up with the figure they have? I'm a retired builder and I have a friend who's a retired structural engineer, and we've worked out that we could do the whole thing to proper standards for 170,000. Ours would be stone clad to make it in keeping with the area. But would it be proper stone cladding or would it be that plastic stuff, Eddie? So there's an offer for this throwaway government. Well, there you go. That could be saving £500,000. We need to phone Eddie and get him to do it. It does seem a lot of money, but I have to say I'm not a civil engineer. I'm often amazed at just how much it costs to do anything when you start looking at civil engineering projects. So maybe 750,000 isn't a lot of money in the great scheme of things. It just feels like it, doesn't it? Well, one person who's probably got a good idea about this is DOI Minister Phil Gordon. Minister, good afternoon. Thanks for joining us.
First of all, Stu.
So this bridge in Laxey, it seems that it's going to cost £750,000. Now, I've said that I'm not a civil engineer, so I don't know how much these things cost, but it does seem to be a huge amount of money. And I've had a text from somebody who's a builder who says he could do it for £170,000. We had somebody on before Christmas who said that we could get one of these Bailey bridges for 35 grand. It does seem to be a bit of a Rolls-Royce solution, this.
I'm not quite sure why the music to the film Bridge Too Far has suddenly come into my mind, but for some reason it has. No, I mean it's not. The cost is not going to be excessive. I'm surprised that people think that it is. There are various options that we could look at. My preferred option as a conservationist is that we carefully replace the old Packhorse Bridge, the 300-400-year-old Packhorse Bridge that used to be there, and then add a bit of strengthening to it and do a really sensitive conservation job on the bridge. That would be
reconstruct
my
it.
preferred option. It'd be fantastic. It could cost millions and millions of pounds to do that.
Would it?
So quite frankly, despite that being my preferred option, it's not going to happen.
Right.
So what we are looking at is a relatively simple design, which 2 or 3 relatively simple designs, to be honest, which we are we've already spoken to the Laxey Heritage Trust. I think it is Laxey and Lonnon Heritage Trust. We've talked to the Regeneration Committee and the local MHK, the Speaker of the House of Keys, Steve Roden. We've spoken to the commissioners, and we've spoken to Manx National Heritage. And we are doing what we said we would do. We're actively engaging with the community and asking people's views. Added to which, today, I forget the name of the Laxey newsletter, and no doubt Laxey people will let me know what that is, but that Laxey newsletter is going to have a full spread about the bridge with various different designs. We've got fairly tight time scale for people to respond, but provided they email their comments back to us by 5 p.m. next Thursday, they will be able to influence our decision.
So, whatever solution you come up with, is it the DOI that's going to do the work? Because I've had a suggestion here that says, why don't you just get 3 different contractors in and get tenders for the job?
And certainly we have done much more work through contractors in recent years, and ended up getting pilloried by various select committees of Tynwald for doing so, because that the job wasn't done perhaps as well as it might have been. That said, we're doing our best to work with the community. It is unusual for us to, when we're effectively reconstructing a piece of infrastructure, to go to this length to engage with the community. We're doing that because we feel it is the right thing to do. We want to get people involved. We want people to have their say. That said, the timescales are relatively tight if we want to get this done for TT. Now, there have been suggestions that we don't need to get it done for TT. Certainly, I think Pat, who was on earlier, seemed to think that wasn't really the main priority.
Yeah.
From my point of view, I'm trying to do what the elected representatives of the area have asked us to do, which is get the bridge rebuilt as quickly as possible, so that we can, get life in the village back to normal as quickly as possible. So we're going to do the best job that we possibly can. We may involve contractors, where we've done more than I think anyone has done for many years in terms of trying to get public views on this particular piece of infrastructure. We are keen to hear what people have to say, and please do respond. We've got a really nice, easy to use email for people to respond to, which is laxeybridge@gov.im. So get your views in. Let us know what you think. We're going to do it, as I say, we're going to have to do it in a reasonably cost-effective, which means cheap manner. But clearly we want to do whatever we do as sensitively as possible.
All right, Infrastructure Minister Phil Gawne, thank you very much indeed for joining us on the programme today.
No problem at all. Cheers.
Let's have a look at some of your comments about this. Large plans available in Trading Places, Main Road, Laxey for inspection. Thanks from Andrew, Chairman of Laxey Village Commissioners. Thanks. All right, so if you want to have a look at it, Trading Places, Main Road in Laxey, and you can have a look at what is being planned. As per the news this morning, don't they have to tender everything over 100,000? Don't know. Precast bridge in 2 sections would do the job. Lots of them over motorways. Could be clad in stone too. Lots over the River Wear in Durham. Another mountain from a molehill. Yeah, OK. Stews should be shared space like the prom scheme. Loads of room for buses, horse, trams, cyclists, etc. Don't start on that one. If you regularly commute in and around Laxey, either to and from your home to any from the nurseries, schools, laundrette, etc., you'll agree how essential this bridge is. How difficult is it to get 3 quotes and compare the price? Surely must be some competitive businesses out there wanting the work, and I'm sure the taxpayer would be happy with obtaining the quotes and going for the most competitive. That would be transparent and fair. Yes, I saw that earlier on. I kind of put that to Phil Gorn, and he said that there is often an element of that kind of thing, but there seem to be problems in Peel with the silt removal job in terms of tendering, getting people outside of the department to do jobs like that, so maybe he's a little bit wary of it, I don't know. Why can't they just have a public meeting in Laxey to find out what type of bridge the public wants? Would be much quicker, says Terry. I don't know, Terry. Hey boy, just build the bridge and stop moaning. I bet there wasn't this much fuss 150 years ago when the Ford was lost and the bridge built. Facts, says Frank. Thank you, Frank. Hey boy, God help us if the DOI try to fix it, says G. Well, I think that's maybe a little bit unfair as well. It's dead easy to bang a precast bridge across motorways, but how are you going to get it and the massive plant needed down there, says Neil. Now, there's somebody who knows what he's talking about. Yes, motorways, it would be relatively easy to do that, but yeah, it might be a bit more difficult there. They should get tenders for the work, says Bob. You mentioned Peel. Well, when they split the contract into 3, so they didn't have to go to Treasury to get approval for the total cost, so they probably don't want to go for tendering for this bridge. It's only a small bridge and it shouldn't cost this much. It's ludicrous. Right then.
Talking Heads, brought to you by Magic Carpets, with the only Carndine design showroom on the island.
That's it for the latest look back at Talking Heads. Our thanks as ever to everyone who contributed to the programme. If you'd like to get involved in the discussion, call, text or email between midday or 2 p.m. on weekdays, or share your thoughts at any time on the Facebook page, Talking Heads with Stu Peters. You can listen back to each day's programme in full using the on-demand section of manxradio.com, and the website's also where you'll find an update of what's being discussed on the programme each day. You can also keep up to date with that information by liking the Facebook page or following Stu Manx on Twitter. And if there's anything you think we should be discussing on the programme, let us know by emailing talk@manxradio.com. But that's it for now, so until next time, goodbye.
Don't sit in the slow lane. Join the fast lane right now with Shaw's all-new Superfast Plus broadband. Enjoy more bandwidth, amazing speeds and the best value on the island from just £23.95 per month. So don't be left behind. Get a piece of the high-speed action with Superfast Plus broadband from Shaw. For details, visit our stores in Douglas, Ramsey and Port Erin or click shaw.com.
Love being Shaw.
Terms and conditions apply.